Breaking news, Geophysicist Stefan Burns here. We are seeing some dramatic and extremely bizarre anomalous shifts in these Schumann resonances across the globe at this moment in time. Specifically, we're seeing a huge power increase out of the United Kingdom, and we're seeing a very unusual frequency pattern and some anomalous pre-earthquake signals out of Cumiana, Italy. And this has just occurred in the past 48 hours. Keep in mind, we are still in a geomagnetic storm right now. I've been covering this on the channel. It was a G2 at its strongest. Now we are still having enhanced geomagnetic volatility across the planet. And we have a partial solar eclipse coming up on the 29th. So there's already been a lot of energy perturbations occurring across the globe, and we have more to come. And now we're seeing some very dramatic shifts in these Schumann resonances. Some of you may be asking, what are the Schumann resonances? Well, they are this global field of energy that connects everything together simultaneously. And many people consider Schumann resonances to be Earth's heartbeat. Very much a diagnostic signal that informs us about the state of the planet and also the health of the planet. For example, we know that Schumann resonances and their frequency and their intensity is connected to global climate and global temperature. It's connected to the global electric circuit. We see changes in the background vertical electric field and the magnetic field where those Schumann resonances exist when there's local atmospheric activity like a thunderstorm or electrified rain cloud or even like a cyclone, tornado, things of that nature. We also see Schumann resonances change in response to space weather. They also change in their frequency and in their intensity as a result of the solar cycle that's 12 years long. They also increase in power in certain frequency bands before earthquakes. We see that observational evidence across time. And so Schumann resonances, again, they are connected to everything, it seems. And now we're seeing very dramatic shifts out of the United Kingdom in the magnetic field in the Schumann resonances, as you can see here. And then also this extremely bizarre frequency modulated pattern out of Cumiana, Italy. But other places, like out of Tomsk, Russia, are not showing any big change. So what is happening right now with the Schumann resonances? That is what we are going to explore in this video. Let's get right into it. Let's start with what I think is the most striking change that we have seen in the Schumann resonances in a very long time. And I don't exactly have an explanation for you, but we'll go through the different options as to what is occurring right now. So here we are looking at the 0 to 50 hertz magnetic field, the east-west direction. So they align these induction coils that they observe these Schumann resonances with going east to west. And we have this out of Eskdalemer in the United Kingdom. This is all data provided by the British Geologic Survey. They have a geophysical station in Eskdalemer. Here we see the data from March 24th. This is what it normally looks like. We see our intensity scale there. This is going from 10 to the -3 picotesla all the way up to 10 to the 3 picotesla. And so we see our Schumann resonances here cutting across. This is 0 hertz, this is 50 hertz. So we see 10 hertz, 20 hertz, 30. So this is our first foundational mode at about 7.8 hertz to 8 hertz on average. You see that's a little bit of a band, but very clearly that's constantly resonating across time at that frequency range. Then we have mode 2 at about 14 hertz. Mode 3 is 20 hertz. Mode 4 is 26 hertz. Mode 5 is 33. Then you have 39, 45, and it kind of fades off after that. What's so interesting about the Schumann resonances, why so many people are interested in them and why they're so important, not only their geophysical connections, but also those frequency ranges, those bands I just outlined perfectly overlap with human brainwaves. And also in intensity too. Our brainwaves pulse at the same frequencies and at the same picotesla intensity as Earth's Schumann resonances, which have existed since there's been a global electric circuit, which is based on the current model and framework and understanding of the Earth. That's been billions and billions of years. So we evolved within these Schumann resonances, and that just naturally expressed itself in our biology as we have them basically as our brain waves. And we see dominant Schumann resonance patterns in our brain, especially the caudal regions in the back, the temporal lobes. They also connect to our heart rhythms, and they change during geomagnetic storms and things of this nature. Well, look what happened yesterday, March 26th. Now we see a massive increase in the intensity in the Schumann resonances out of Eskdale-Mir. The only unfortunate thing as it relates to me presenting this data is I don't have the data for March 25th. For some reason, they didn't present the data on the 25th. You can go to this webpage, they update the data daily, and then once it's, the next day is on, it's basically, you won't get that data for a while. They put it into archive, but it takes them some time to upload it to the archive. You have to know how to use MATLAB to create these plots. Whatever, okay? This is March 24th. I was able to download the data. I've been downloading this data now for months, just keeping my own archive of it. They didn't have an update on the 25th, and then I loaded it up today, and they showed March 26th. They're always about 24 hours behind. They post yesterday's data, right? All of a sudden, we see this massive increase in the intensity of the Schumann resonances right here. And so this is very bizarre, and I was shocked when I saw this because none of the data I have has ever shown this going up this much in intensity. But what's also bizarre about this is that we saw a dramatic change in the Schumann resonances at the same time out of Cumiana, Italy. We'll check that out next. But before we do that, I want to show you the north-south component direction because it tells a very similar story. And here we have the same graphic, except this time it's for the north-south component direction. So now they're measuring the magnetic field oscillations running north to south using these induction coils. Again, here is March 24th. We see its relative intensity. This is a normal looking spectrogram. And then we see for the 26th, again, this big increase in the intensity across the entire board for the background magnetic field north-south direction and the Schumann resonances. And so there's a few possibilities for this. One is that there was some sort of data processing change or glitch or something, like they didn't have the data for the 25th. I refreshed that page a few times throughout the 26th to get that data for the day before. They didn't have it. So it's pretty rare that they don't present the most recent data. There's only a 1-day gap, and then all of a sudden we see this shift. So there may be perhaps some change to their data collection and then processing procedures. Or we could actually be seeing a dramatic increase in the power for the Schumann resonances out of Eskdale-Mir. We know that right now we're still in a G1 geomagnetic storm. The highest intensity reach was a G2. It's been a long duration storm right now. Solar wind is very fast, really crunching on Earth's magnetic field. And then we also have some other energetic phenomenon coming up, like the new moon partial solar eclipse on the 29th. So we're in this boundary zone in between two big energetic events, and we're seeing this big shift in the Schumann resonances out of Eskdale-Mir. Again, I don't have an exact explanation for you. It's more just me presenting the data for your awareness. Not many people are aware of this data, this public data out of Eskdale-Mir. This is the magnetic field. Keep that in mind. Now let's look at some vertical electric field data for the Schumann resonances out of Cumiana, Italy, because it has just recently transformed into a very bizarre signal. And here we have another extremely bizarre, and frankly, this one is kind of disturbing to me, data set showing the Schumann resonances. This time we're looking at the vertical electric field. So you have Earth's ground surface, it has a charge to it. This is typically 0 volts, but it does change around that value. Then you have Earth's ionosphere, it has a charge that's about 250,000 volts. The ionosphere is 50 kilometers up during the day, 100 plus kilometers up at night. You get this electric current that flows in between them. The air is very resistive, but they do want to equalize. And so you have this weak electric current that flows between them. You have these oscillations that sit upon that. Some of those oscillations are Schumann resonances. And so we see these vibrations in the electric field across time, just the same as like with the magnetic field. Here's mode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It goes up, 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 up like this. We have some anomalous signals there. And this was what first caught my attention when I was looking at this data set. But then I also saw this, and this is where things get really weird. We see this extremely bizarre like frequency intensity pattern making like this circle and going across time too. We see here our time. This is for March 26th. 1800 UTC all the way to 1:30 a.m. Universal Time, 27th. And this data is all available at vlf.it. We see our intensity legend up there. So you can see that as you go into red, you're getting higher and higher in intensity. Before we talk about that though, let's go back down here because we have seen these sort of anomalous signals in this part of the vertical electric field about 20 to 105 hertz before. Last time we saw that was early February, and we saw that multiple times, as you can see in this data compilation here. And right after we got those anomalous signals, there was a seismic burst at the Campi Flegrei supervolcano right next to Naples in Italy, right under the town of Pozzuoli and in Pozzuoli Bay. I thought these anomalous signals were connected to the earthquake swarm out of Greece near Santorini Island, Santorini volcano. In fact, as I'm filming this, we did just have a magnitude 4.5 earthquake in that swarm location. So things seem to just maybe be starting to wake up a little bit there. But the location for Campi Flegrei and this monitoring station are much closer together, and they are more closely connected together temporally in time, because we had these anomalous signals and then all of a sudden we had this seismic burst in Campi Flegrei, 800 plus earthquakes, multiple magnitude 3.5 plus earthquakes. There was a 4.4 magnitude earthquake that occurred just earlier this month on March 13th. There's been increasing gas emissions there. So this station that's observing the vertical electric field out of Cumiana could be picking up more pre-earthquake signals for Campi Flegrei. It's a very active zone hydrothermally. You have a lot of fluid flow, and there's salt and different gases, and these are ions and charge carriers, and they oscillate, and so you create these anomalous signals. So first and foremost, we're seeing two things with this data. First and foremost, we could be seeing basically a precursor signal for Campi Flegrei. As you see, it's not as big as the ones from the past, but definitely a change from normal, and we haven't seen this for about a month now. But going up here, this is where things get really weird, because this again, this is like the data of Eskdale Mirror. I don't know how to explain this other than it's some sort of data processing error. They have this antenna that they string up. This guy, Renato, who runs this, he has this antenna stringed up, and then you have to run the data through like a preamplifier, and then it goes through like a sound card, and then it gets processed with the software, and then it gets presented and put on the website. So there's a lot of different steps involved, and maybe there's some signal that's somehow getting put into the data, so it's showing up with this frequency pattern, but it's just an artifact, right? It's just some artificial artifact, not actually reflecting what we're observing in reality. Or this could be something that's happening right now, and this definitely does not look natural. This is not something the Earth would make. Like when I saw this, it's like this could be perhaps some sort of like ionospheric heater experiment, because like HAARP, right? There's plenty of research studies out there on HARP, and you can look at them, and they do these sort of pulsed microwave emissions at the ionosphere, and they pulse them at certain frequencies that could feasibly show up just like this on a spectrogram. We see that the intensity increases because of that. So there is technology that can start to modulate and manipulate the background electric field in select locations depending on how they aim that. That goes all the way back to like the Russian woodpecker, the Duga radar. But we have this technology as well now for a long time. I'm sure there's a lot of technology that is able to manipulate these fields that is clandestine and that we're not aware of. If we're just being fully honest, that's probably the case, as we see time and time again across history with governments, powerful governments. But this is very bizarre. And one of the reasons this is so concerning, if this is not some sort of data error, right? Just being the artificial noise being put into the data, then this is altering the background energy field that we live in. And again, Schumann resonances, like these guys down here, they overlap with our brain waves. They connect to our heart rhythms, and they are Earth's heartbeat. So how does altering Earth's heartbeat change some of the geophysical parameters on the planet? That's something to think about. This could be very concerning. So I don't know what's happening to cause this. I don't know what's happening to cause this huge power intensity increase that we're seeing out of the United Kingdom. Thankfully, there are some signs that everything's not completely amiss. Let's now look at our data out of Tomsk, Russia. And here's our last Schumann resonances data set. This is for the past 3 days. This is collected by the Space Observing System. That is the URL right there. We're looking at the 0 to 40 hertz vertical electric field. This time with this spectrogram, 0 hertz is up top, 40 hertz is down below. So you go higher in frequency as you go down in this spectrogram. And this is all in universal time +7. So you can see our time markers there. That's all UTC +7. So you can convert this to your own local time. Here we see some atmospheric activity that caused this increase in the lower frequencies. This is very likely like a rain cloud passing over the observation station or nearby, causing this intensity increase. We see our intensity scale there. And then after that occurred, things quieted down. We see that our background vertical electric field 0 to 40 hertz all of a sudden went basically back to more normal values. We see our Schumann resonances still there propagating across time, right? They don't really ever turn off like I mentioned. We do see some small power artifacts there, like this guy clicks on every single day from 2300 to 2400, UTC +7 for them, they're midnight. And a signal like that is usually related to the power supply, creating a little waveform. So that's I got that information by going to an actual geophysical observatory that measures the Schumann resonances, talking to the geophysicist. I presented that to him. He's like, yeah, that's very likely what it is because we had that data problem before and then they fixed it. This is out of Hungary. But what's interesting about this is that we do see these frequency increases for all the first 4 modes after this atmospheric phenomenon came to an end. And there was a delay for mode 1 too. So here we see this local weather system that's going to influence the vertical electric field in that area. So you're measuring global energy signals with the Schumann resonances, but you're also observing local noise stacked on top of that. And you may not consider it noise if you want to understand what's happening in your local area. But one of the problems with looking at Schumann resonances data, and one of the problems that a lot of people run into that present this data online with like YouTube or TikTok or whatever, is that they don't know how to differentiate between a global signal like what we have here, because this is like nice fair weather conditions. That is a specific term that you can use. It's when you have nice clear skies and no clouds. So you have it's called fair weather conditions versus disturbed conditions. When you have clouds or rain clouds or a thunderstorm, most people can't differentiate between the two that are presenting this data online. I'm sure some of you know them, and they make up these explanations as to what is happening that's not grounded or based in any sort of reality. That's just the truth of it. But we do see this connection with Schumann resonances with our brain waves, and there's this connection with consciousness, and perhaps they are a field of energy and information that is connected to the collective consciousness. Like there's a lot of very interesting things as it relates to Schumann resonances, how they connect out into the solar wind even. They bleed past the ionosphere. They connect out into the solar wind. The solar wind can have these frequencies embedded within it too. These are just frequency pulsations that we happen to evolve with that have a lot of rich connections to us biologically, bioelectrically, and with the earth, right? Resonance. When you have resonance, you're sharing energy and information. And so this is our natural earth resonance. And that can change across time. That's what we're seeing. So after this came to a close, the local effect of a weather system passing over the observation station, we got fair weather conditions in Tomsk, showing us that the Schumann resonances are fairly normal. The one thing that is a little bizarre is this frequency shift for the first mode up. So it was hovering around 7.6 to 7.5 hertz. That's still within range. But then after, we see all of them have increased in frequency and have stayed increased in frequency. Mode 1 still being above 8 hertz at this moment in time. Again, still within range, but a little bizarre to see such a frequency shift during fair weather conditions, especially this one with the first mode. We see that happening after this thunderstorm came to a close. But in general, this is showing that out of Tomsk, Russia, for the past 48 plus hours, things have been normal with the Schumann resonances. which brings into question why we are seeing big changes out of Cumiana, Italy, and also why we're seeing big changes out of Eskdale-Mir. We have one other data set to look at. Let's look at our Hungarian data. And here we have some more publicly available data on these Schumann resonances, and in general for the Earth. This is from the Hungarian Research Network, the Sopron Geophysical Observatory, and I've been there before. This is the place that I went to before, and I mentioned earlier, and I talked to some of the geophysicists there. They do a fantastic job. They're great people. This is real time, so they're presenting data without a delay, and we see both vertical electric field and magnetic field data right here. This is our latest plot. And so we have our north-south magnetic field there, our east-west magnetic field, and then our vertical electric field. This time 0 hertz is at the bottom, 45 hertz is up top. And so we see our Schumann resonances propagating across there. A little interesting that we have these huge spikes across the modes of the Schumann resonances there, and there wasn't any significant weather activity. At least there wasn't any rain, which is typically what would explain that. But this is for the 27th. Let's see how this has changed from the 24th through the 26th. Here we have our data for March 24th, which if you remember looking at the Eskdale-Mir data, that was totally normal, and we don't see anything anomalous here for March 24th out of Sopron, Hungary. And here we have the data for March 25th, and again a similar story, nothing extremely bizarre or anomalous for the data. We do see a little bit more intensity across the Schumann resonances here in the vertical electric field. But in general, I'm not seeing anything that's very bizarre or anomalous with the data for March 25th out of Sopron, Hungary. And for March 26th, it's basically the same story. Everything's looking normal and fine for the Schumann resonances as observed out of Sopron, Hungary. So it really begs the question as to why we saw such a dramatic intensity increase in the background field out of Eskdale-Mir in the United Kingdom, right on the border, the southern border of Scotland basically, and why we're seeing this frequency modulated pattern out of Cumiana, Italy, whereas the data out of Hungary and the data out of Tomsk, Russia is fine. It basically seems like there's a distinction between Western Europe and Central and Eastern Europe, which is a little bizarre. Unfortunately, we don't have real-time data for North America or for South America, for Africa. These public observatories that release their data out to everyone are few and far between. So the Europeans do a good job with it, but as it relates to the United States and other places, we're really just out of luck. So there may be some evidence that Earth's heartbeat is changing, but these changes are not reflected universally across the globe at this moment in time. There's also a pretty high likelihood that we're just seeing a coincidence of two data errors for two different locations at the same time. I really don't know which one it is. What I'll do is I'll continue to watch all these different public data feeds for the Schumann resonances and bring any updates to you. What I can say 100% is that what we're seeing out of Cumiana, Italy in the 0 to 105 hertz zone, that anomalous signal very much matches up with anomalous pre-earthquake signals that we've seen before historically, and also for that station itself just a month ago with that seismic burst out of Campi Flegrei. So we could see some activity out of Campi Flegrei soon. And then as it relates to the frequency modulated signal that's in the higher frequency zone going from 0 to 15,000 hertz, that looks bizarre. That looks very artificial, whether that was induced through some sort of geophysical device like HARP, something like that, or whether that was just a data glitch, I don't know. And as it relates to the incredible intensity increase out of Eskdale-Mir in the United Kingdom, that's also very bizarre. I wish that data for March 25th was put on the website, but that is the day that we have that gap, and then we see the shift all of a sudden to much higher intensity. So that's the state of everything right now. Just presenting this for you because I look at all these different stations. If you look just at the data out of Tomsk, it looks normal. You may not be aware of some of these things happening. So again, you can subscribe to the channel to stay appraised. Smash that like button. I've been your host, Stefan Burns. Thank you all so much. If you like to mutually support each other, to help support my efforts to build Schumann resonance stations across North America. That's a plan of mine for the next 12, 18 months going through 2026. Then you can go to my website, wildfreeorganic.com/store. I have a whole bunch of natural holistic wellness products that I offer, that I make myself, earthing shoes. I have different tea blends like spirituality that help you stay balanced with these changing energies on our planet and actually to capitalize on them because they present a unique opportunity for spiritual growth. And so anything that you order from there, I'm putting into a piggy bank so eventually I can build a geophysical observatory in North America, in the United States, and then hopefully a lot more across the entire world. So that is just a plan, a goal, a passion of mine. And all of you here on the channel are supporting that. Thank you all so much. We have just passed like 200,000 subscribers with this video. So thank you all so much gratitude from me to you. Wishing all of you well, love and light. God bless, and I'll see you all in the next video.